William Crawley with Talkback on BBC Radio Ulster.
Welcome back, everybody. Just turning 7 minutes past 1. Donald Trump, you will have seen, lashed out at both Israel and Iran yesterday. He was clearly frustrated after both sides exchanged missiles in spite of the ceasefire he had already declared. The manner in which he did so, of course, made headlines too. You will understand once you hear this.
Really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, he used the F word. He F-bombed on live television. I wonder why. Was he just giving another example of the sort of coarsening of American politics? Or do you think it's because maybe, and some people are speculating this, he had already had access to the intelligence report now leaked to the New York Times and CNN, which suggested that those nuclear sites that were bombed to total obliteration, in the words of Donald Trump, in fact still exist and were only rather superficially damaged and could be rebuilt and put back into action in a matter of months. I don't know, but it's a speculative point, isn't it? Who do you believe? Those behind the preliminary intelligence report suggesting that the nuclear sites were not totally obliterated, or Donald Trump, who is indeed today at the NATO summit doubling down saying, stuff and nonsense, they were totally obliterated? Who do you believe? 03030 80 55 55. We're joined by Jane Kinnamont, who's Chief Executive of the UK United Nations Association. Barzo Daragahi is a former international correspondent with The Independent. And Barry Donadio is a former member of the US Secret Service and is Sergeant of Arms of the Maryland Republican Party. That's quite a title, Barry. Welcome to all of you. Good to have you with us. Barry, who do you believe?
Well, I believe both of them. First, let me thank you and your guests, your listeners. Thanks for having me. But I believe the Pentagon and I believe Donald Trump, and here's why. The Pentagon, if that report is actually authentic, that was leaked, and, any assessment that the Pentagon or a government agency gives is going to be like scientific and, well-measured, but as we all know, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's unfiltered. I grew up 40 miles away from where he's from. We're both New Yorkers, and everybody knows New Yorkers talk a certain way. If he says those things were obliterated, in a sense of common language, yeah, they're obliterated. I've seen the pictures. I believe General Kane, also of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, those things were blown up. I mean, if you look at Fordo, there's 3 holes in that thing that were dropped by, created by bunker buster bombs. These are 30,000-pound bombs. I've looked at the photo. I've seen. It looked like it caved in. To me, it looks like it's caved in. So whether this is out of, functioning level, it's not going to function for months or years. Well, that thing's blown up, bottom line.
Also, I've looked at the photos too. They don't look caved in to me. They look like holes on the surface. I'm not sure what's going on under those holes.
And I'm not sure it actually matters. Iran moved its fissile material from these sites well before these attacks, moved them to undisclosed locations.
Do we know that for sure?
From based on what I have heard, yes.
What you've
based
heard?
On what I know, based on what I've heard from contacts within the diplomatic community.
So those trucks that people saw images of before the attacks from the US, there was some speculation at the time, wasn't there, when we saw those images of the trucks?
It might have been well before that, even. The enriched uranium was stockpiled. We're not exactly sure where all of it was stockpiled. And because the inspectors have not been back because of the conflict with Iran and Israel, they used to have eyes on this stuff, and it could be somewhere else. And in that case, and even if it was damaged, there would be radiation assessments that would show that it was released. But even if it wasn't damaged, the point is that Iran has the know-how to reconstitute its program.
They've got the knowledge, yeah. They've got the knowledge.
Yes, and that is the most important part. That's the part you can't bomb. And it will go further underground. Before this conflict, the IAEA didn't have great. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear non-proliferation arm, didn't have great vision on the Iranian nuclear program, but it had a pretty good idea of where it was at. And now it will have even less, and Iran could take its program underground and pursue a weapon, which, according to U.S. intelligence and the IAEA, it wasn't pursuing before, and we would have no knowledge of it.
And Jane, the International Atomic Energy Agency today saying they want access, they want to go in and have a look and see what exactly is there or not there.
Well, absolutely, because this is really the only route to international scrutiny of Iran's nuclear program. And that's why, it's quite frustrating to very many that there was an international agreement with Iran signed a decade ago, the JCPOA, which enabled international monitoring and verification by the IAEA to ensure that Iran's nuclear program was for civilian purposes. And that agreement doesn't function today because in his first term, Donald Trump unilaterally walked out of it, not because he didn't trust the IAEA particularly, but essentially because it had been Obama's signature foreign policy achievement, and he thought that it wasn't such a good idea and he wanted a different approach. But it remains the case that having a non-proliferation agreement that is functioning and having international inspections is likely to be a better route to securing non-proliferation than airstrikes, which, as we've seen, will have set back Iran's nuclear program, but probably haven't totally destroyed it.
So if I put all those answers together, and we're trying to kind of crowdsource some kind of understanding here, Barry, Donald Trump says he believes these sites were totally obliterated. Well, he can believe what he likes. We don't know the answer to the question yet. We cannot say with confidence that these underground sites, the appropriate bits were taken out. We cannot say that with confidence at this point, right?
I would say we can. I mean, if we look at the pictures, look at Fordo. I don't know if your other two guests have analyzed photos.
No, but the Defense Intelligence Agency experts did this preliminary assessment, and they're the ones who are saying they do not believe these sites were disabled and taken out. They believe that the entrances were, but they say you could put these sites back together within a matter of months. Tops. That's a quote.
I would say good luck to that. I mean, Fordo,
but they're not amateurs, Barry. That's my point. They're not amateurs, right? It's the Defense Intelligence Agency.
I don't know exactly who commented. I don't know exactly what
U.S.
they were looking at.
military intelligence report leaked to the New York Times and CNN.
Okay, so again, if we're assuming that some leak is actually a real leak and a real document, then I guess we can go by whatever they're saying. What I have seen, what we have heard from the Pentagon's mouth, I don't think the Pentagon is in the business of lying.
Well, the Defense Intelligence Agency is part of the Pentagon.
Right, if the report is real. And we know we're in an age of AI where somebody can leak a document, put it out.
The US,
you come on.
Well, no, the White House I'm going by the White House's response, Barry. They're not denying that this report is real. They're saying it's a preliminary report, and they disagree with the findings of the report, but they're not denying that it exists.
Well, let's go with the report is real. We'll say the report is real.
We're just making this up as we go.
No. But if the report is real and we go along with that,
all right. Well, I've tried it was AI. That didn't work. I'll try something else now.
Well, hey,
go for it. Go for it.
Take a look at it, and we go and see exactly what we're talking about. We're talking on the radio about an alleged report. Okay, if we're going to accept it as real, we'll say that it might not have been as damaged as maybe some people have said. But look, the sites were bombed. The sites were
something
dropped.
was bombed.
Well, absolutely. And we have damage to the sites to where, okay, were the Iranians going to be able to make a nuclear bomb today now? No, they're not.
But they weren't able to make a nuclear bomb 2 weeks ago either.
I disagree because we have facilities. The facilities were in place.
But you see,
now
look,
they've
there's
been
other
blown
aspects.
up to smithereens.
Well, you're saying that we don't know that. We don't know that they've been blown to smithereens.
Even if they were blown up to smithereens, even if they weren't blown up to smithereens, Iran has. I'm so sorry for alienating anyone with some technical nerd talk here, but Iran does not have the other parts of the advanced technology needed to create the nuclear weapon.
The weaponization
and it has
bit.
not, according to the weaponization, the creation of the intricate implosion event that would be required to set off a Hiroshima-style nuclear weapon. And Iran, according to the IAEA and according to the Western intelligence sources, has not worked on 2003. So you could have a mountain of uranium. If you don't have the technology to turn that into a bomb, you're not a week away from making a bomb. You're maybe a year or two from making a bomb.
Okay, so then I would have to ask what the Fordo site is. What is
it's an enrichment facility. It's to enrich uranium.
It's full of
centrifuges.
It's got all these
It's a quarter of a mile under the ground, right? It's a quarter of a mile under the ground.
With
so why do we
IAEA
need that under
inspectors
the
and
ground?
cameras. Because of the bombing that Israel and the U.S. did. They knew it was coming. And by
this
the way,
gets to exactly one of the
they knew
recurring...
it was...
One second, guys.
They
Jane's
knew it
coming
was
in as well.
coming years
Everybody's
ago.
down the line here, so please go when I call out your name, then we can
sorry
avoid the
about that,
crossfire.
Jane.
Jane, go ahead.
Well, this gets to exactly one of the recurring problems that over time conflicts become self-fulfilling. People are asking, why did Iran want to hide its nuclear program? Well, Iran was predicting for a long time that something like this could happen. And you get into what people sometimes call the deterrence trap, where there's a situation of mutually reinforcing insecurity and paranoia that basically means that each side is building up plans to defend themselves that look to the other side like a plan for attack. One way through it would be to try to bring about a normalization of Iran's relationship with the US and ultimately, ideally, with Israel, but that's a very long way off, it seems. There are still efforts, even now, even when it seems so much harder, to get talks going again and to try to come up with some kind of accommodation between Iran and the US that would remove the need actually to try to deal with things in this way and be potentially going into years where there may be allegations of enriched uranium turning up in different parts of Iran. There may be further strikes. There is a diplomatic way out of this.
So Tom in Bangor, our listener Tom, says that US intelligence is unreliable. Iran has already used decoy sites to hide its enrichment plans, he says, with great confidence. Maybe. Who knows? Joe in Belfast says, please kindly note, anything Trump says cannot be verified, cannot be trusted. He is a habitual liar. Somebody else says Trump is seeking to make the world a safer place for us all, but all he gets is ingratitude, particularly from those sitting in the comfort of a Belfast studio. Hey, just doing my own research here, just asking questions. And Barzoo, we now have a ceasefire, which Donald Trump F-bombed into existence yesterday. He may regret a ceasefire if it is the case that those enrichment facilities still exist somewhere.
I think he had his 12-day show. It riled up the MAGA base. It gave him, when he saw that Netanyahu's campaign was rather successful, that it had been based on years of intelligence and so on, it wasn't turning into a debacle. He added the U.S. signature onto it, described it as the 12-day war, ended it, congratulated everyone as you might at the end of a game show, and called it quits. And he became frustrated when he saw the reality of the Middle East, which is that, ceasefires are not ceasefires. And, you can't solve a war with a simple declaration, especially when there's decades of animosity and systemic causes. So he got frustrated and used the F-bomb.
And let's just note that we haven't heard from the Ayatollah yet to confirm that he believes a ceasefire is in place. Isn't that right?
We haven't heard from the Ayatollah, but we have heard from Iranian officials who are,
But the Ayatollah has the final say.
He does have the final say, but he would not have sent people out there. Look, like I said, in the Middle East, a ceasefire, I don't think we've heard like a definitive statement from Netanyahu saying that the war is over either. But when you have a situation in the Middle East like this, ceasefires are basically meant to be broken.
I guess, Barry, Donald Trump is very worried also about how this plays with his base, with Republicans, with independents, with Americans generally. He said this is a one-and-done deal. I'm totally obliterating it. And then if he gets a report saying, well, it may have looked that way, but it's still there, or it could be somewhere else. He's saying that's politically, that's very inconvenient. So I'm ditching that report, and I'm going to double down. I'm going to say it's a one-and-done deal because he would be in political trouble if it isn't, right?
Well, I don't know what political trouble he would be in. He's not going to be up for re-election. I think he's just doing what he thinks is best. And we also have to stay focused on really what this is about. Do you, your guests, or anybody listening really want the Iranian supreme leader to have any possibility of having a nuclear weapon? Then the answer is no to everybody listening. I already know
but that's a separate that's a separate question. The question is whether it's been taken out or not.
It has been taken on because, quite simply, are we further from him having a nuclear weapon right now or closer? And
maybe closer because Iran had not made the decision. And Iran had not made the decision, according to the best evidence that we have.
There could be a rush. There could now be a rush to a bomb. There could be powerful people in Iran saying, you know what, the only way we can seriously protect this regime is to have a bomb. We need to follow in the footsteps of North Korea. They didn't wait. They got their bomb. Nobody's attacking them at the minute. Maybe, Barry, that's the consequence.
Well, I think the consequences are already there. Just simply go up to their social media pages. Go to the Ayatollah's page right now. He's got a picture of an American flag on fire, burning.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
I know there's a lot of misinformation.
Hey, we have a peaceful.
It's fair to say there's misinformation on both sides here, or all sides here, from Israel, the United States, and Iran, right? Because like Iranian TV was saying this week, 1/3 of Tel Aviv was bombed and that obliterated, and Donald Trump was begging them for a ceasefire. So there's propaganda everywhere. An opinion poll published yesterday on U.S. airstrikes against Iran, polling Republicans, independents, and Democrats, asking them, do they support the bombing of Iran? Republicans, 82% approve, 18% disapprove. Independents, 40% approve, 60% disapprove. Democrats, 12% approve, 88% disapprove. Combined total, something like 57% of those polls say they disapprove of this action. Let's go to Liam in Draperstown. Hi, Liam.
Hello, William. The best way to judge this nuclear bombing operation in Iran is to judge Israel's previous operations. The Mossad is one of the best intelligence organizations in the world, and the Israeli military ranks about the best in the world. The Iron Dome, you look at Entebbe, you look at Israel, people who attacked their country, they took them out in their own countries, and that they're one of the most ruthless, efficient military organizations in the world, and that would be the way to judge this operation too. When they act, they've got the intelligence. Intelligence runs wars, and then they go in and they're ruthlessly efficient. That is Israel.
Yeah, but we're talking about what America did in dropping those bombs. Was that efficient, or did they leave them?
Well, if you're going to remove a threat to the world, if somebody presses a nuclear button, everybody presses a nuclear button.
No, I get
and who wins?
I get the argument for going in. The question is whether they succeeded or not.
Well, you look at Mossad. They are a very efficient.
Sure, I know, but this is the U.S. military bombing strike that we're talking about. Did it do what Donald Trump said it did? Were those nuclear sites totally obliterated or not?
Well, if it was Israel, it would be an efficient organization. America is another. That is another story.
Okay. Thank you, Liam. Israel doesn't have the bombs, doesn't have the B-2 bombers, could not have done this, but we're begging for quite some time that the U.S. would do it, and Donald Trump did it. And of course, the regime is in a different location now. But Jane, I want in the last few minutes think about where we are now, where we go from here. This clearly isn't over yet.
No, and the example of Iraq, while it's a different country at a different time, does suggest that this could go on and on. We saw a unilateral Israeli strike on Iraq's nuclear facilities back in 1981, but that did not solve the problem. It, by all accounts, prompted Saddam Hussein to redouble his efforts to pursue WMD and disperse them. There were various subsequent bombings. In the end, of course, there was the 2003 invasion, and at that point they found out that he didn't have WMDs. That created an international problem that took decades and, still isn't really resolved because Iraq has been left in such tatters. So let's remember, Donald Trump came in promising to make peace. He started having talks with Iran. As improbable as it seems, he's still offering talks with Iran. Can there be a way out of this that doesn't mean an endless game of military cat and mouse and nuclear threats, but a way to reset and normalise?
As it stands right now, Barzu, this ceasefire gives Iran an opportunity to regroup and reorganise.
Absolutely, and that's what Israel is doing as well, and that's what every other organization and state in the Middle East is doing as well, trying to calculate how it will respond to the next move in this ongoing drama. Look, this is a rough part of the world, and there are no good guys and bad guys in the Middle East. There's no heroics here, except for the paramedics and ambulance drivers who are rescuing people falling from the bombs. Everyone else is an authoritarian or a scoundrel or a thug pretending to be a statesman.
Barry, let's just consider, finally, the scenario that this intelligence report points to. Just consider this possibility, that the US bombed these sites, but that the enriched uranium, or significant amounts of it, survived, right? That Donald Trump is wrong about total obliteration, and it survived. And now we have a ceasefire, and Iran is regrouping and reorganizing, and Iran now feels like, you know what? We may not have had a rush to get a bomb previously, but we certainly do now, because that's the only way we're going to be able to protect ourselves. In that scenario, has Donald Trump made the world a safer place or a more dangerous place?
I mean, they could certainly have uranium, but if they have no way to enrich it, or no centrifuges, or no Fordo, I don't see how they're going to be able to use it.
Uranium is already enriched and stockpiled.
It's in the stockpiling phase, so it's the weaponization bit is the missing bit.
Okay, and all the more reason why this regime has to fall. I don't see, it looks to me like the wheels are already set in motion. I think a ceasefire is very lovely, but ultimately this is, I compare this to World War II. I mean, the Americans went into Germany. That would be like stopping at the gates of Berlin and saying, oh, you know what, we're going to negotiate with Hitler.
You want more bombing?
No, I want a regime change, and I think that's what's going to happen. We have the exiled Prince of Iran gave a speech in Paris.
Fair enough. Doesn't really answer my question, but Barzu, what are the chances of a regime change at this point with a ceasefire?
The regime is extremely unpopular. Let me be honest. I would love to see regime change in Iran too, but it's not going to be, Reza Shah from the suburbs of Washington who's going to take over the country. It's going to be the meanest, nastiest, best armed, best organized group that will take over. That's the Revolutionary Guard, and very likely they will be much more kind of focused on getting a nuclear weapon than even the current regime.
How long before we use the word quagmire?
The Middle East has been one long quagmire for 30 years.
Thank you all very much. Really